Is it possible to read the material just once and retain the information forever without ever getting back to the material? I'm not going to waste your time. The answer is no. But it is very much possible to read the material once and retain it for as long as you want to, only that you need to get back to the material at a spaced interval using some scientific proven techniques I'm going to be sharing with you in this video. Well, I'm not making any of this up. Everything I'm going to be sharing in this video are from actual scientific researches and evidence that has been compiled over the years. I think it makes sense that now that we have better understanding of how human brain works, we as students or as learners should take advantage of this knowledge and use it to improve our lives as students and reduce the frustration associated with being a student generally. So by the end of this video, I want you to go away with three things. Number one, forgetting is a natural process. Secondly, I want you to understand the science of how forgetting happens. And lastly, I want to share some very effective techniques that can help you interrupt forgetting. And if you can interrupt forgetting for a particular information you are definitely going to increase retention for that material. I'm glad you're back to the channel. You're welcome. And if you're new here, I'm a second year medical student of the University of Ibadan. On this channel, we make videos that will make us better students. So please make sure to join the community so as not to miss any of the subsequent videos that will be coming up in the future. So that's it. Let's just jump straight into the video. Now let's start by asking this question: why do we forget? And I'm going to be answering this question by asking you another question. How do you think it will be if you can remember every of the event that's happened from the beginning of your life till this moment? Don't you think it will be very distressful? That is, you can remember every single line of every movie you've watched, every clothes you've put on from the beginning of your life till now. If that is what is actually happening, you are going to have so much information that it will be too distressful, and by the time you need a particular information for a particular thing, you are not going to be able to get the information immediately because you have so much irrelevant information. So you are going to be having something called information overload. So our brain prevents this by discarding and forgetting irrelevant information. Our brain keeps only information that are relevant to our survival. For example, when a child puts his hand into the fire for the first time, if you put this child to the fire next time, he's going to be scared because he has learnt a lesson that is relevant for his survival. But that's where the problem lies. Most of what we are learning in school are not actual things that are relevant for human survival. I don't know how can mathematics help human survival like directly. It can't. So for us to learn our normal school subjects, we have to consciously make this information relevant to our brain. Then we'll be able to retain it. Now that we've known why we forget, now let me explain how forgetting happens. But this guy, he helped us understand how the process of forgetting happened by studying his own brain. He learned some random words and he's plotting the rate at which he's forgetting it in this graph. So we call this curve a forgetting curve. Now let's take a look at this. If you learn a material for the first time, it has been proven that before the next day you would have forgotten about 70% of that material. Now look at this curve. The first curve shows that at the first learning, he has 100% retention. By the end of the first day, the information has reduced to 80%, and by the third day, he has literally forgotten everything that he read. But there's something, you can interrupt this forgetting curve. Look at the second curve. If this person revises the information on the first day, you are going to interrupt the curve, and it's going to take you 7 days before you forget that information. If on the third day you review the information again, you are going to remember the information for way longer. And you even look at this curve, the way at which the information is reviewed is not even. There's like a spacing in between. This is just how forgetting happens. By the time you interrupt one forgetting, the slope, the rate at which you forget will become slower. Before, at the first reading, you forget very easily. But by the time you review the information some few days later, you are going to reduce the rate at which you are forgetting the material. If you review this same information some other days later, you are going to still further reduce the rate at which you are forgetting the information. Then you get to a particular time after reviewing this information for a period of time. It becomes like you cannot forget this information forever, but that's not even true. Like if you don't get back to an information for over a long period of time, you may not forget it completely, but you're not going to remember as much details as you would if you keep reviewing this information. I also need to say this, that The rate at which we forget a particular information is also dependent on the kind of information that is in question. For example, if I want to learn something that is very understandable, the rate at which I will forget that information will be much slower than if I want to just memorize some random words that are totally meaningless to me. So for this kind of information, I need to review it earlier than I would for something that is very understandable and I don't forget immediately. It is very possible to understand something. It has happened to me before that I learned something, I took my time to understand it, and I left it for a long period of time, still thinking I still know it. Then by the time exam was closed, I realized I'd forgotten everything about it, or like almost everything. I was really angry at myself that why would I forget something I once understood? But now I can't be frustrated if such thing happens, because I understand that this is natural. But instead of frustrating myself, I do not let the forgetting happen completely before I interrupt the process of forgetting. Then the rate at which I forget it slows down a lot more. Then I can retain this information to a large extent by the time my exam is closed. Now that we understand how forgetting happens, now let's go to the two techniques that can help you retain information for as long as you want to. The first one is spaced repetition and the second one is active recall. Spaced repetition is just using the principle of this curve, that if you learn information now, you review it on the second day, you review it like on the third day, you review it after the third day, you wait, then you review it a lot later, then you leave longer space before reviewing it again. That is spaced repetition. As I've said before, it depends on the kind of information you are learning. There's some information, if you wait till the next day before reviewing it, by the next day you've forgotten literally everything about it. For such, you could review it in the next few hours. You might feel there's no time. One way I review information after studying, I don't really have to be with my book to review what I've studied. I could be doing something, maybe doing the dishes or lying in my bed when I'm tired of studying. Then in my head, I'll just go over what I've read before. As I'm doing that, I'm going to reduce the rate at which I'm forgetting that information, and that has been helping me a lot. Now let's go to the second one, which is as well very important. Now the question is, how do you review this information? Review them by using active recall. Active recall is like very important. You know, what we usually do is after reading information, we leave it till exam, then we reread it once more. And if that works for you, that's fine. But if you want to study like a lot, if you have a whole lot to study and you want to retain this information for very long, the better way to do it is repeat it in spaced interval. And anytime you are going back reviewing the information, recall it actively. There are many ways to use this active practice. You could do it using any way. In fact, I should make a video on active recall, and I'm going to do that in the future. There are different ways you can do active recall. You could make questions yourself. What I personally do, I don't use any of this active recall app, but I make questions myself. Write the questions on one page like this, and on the other side of the book I write the answers there. So before rereading the book, I will try to answer my own questions. During the process of trying to bring out information from your brain, you are doing a lot of things. You are making your brain consolidate this information. You are joining the information together. And just think about this. In exam, that's exactly what we are required to do. You are required to actively recall information that you've learned over the time. So why not do this long before your exam? Why not make it a normal practice to always recall information? Then when you get to exam, it won't be very difficult. You don't have to think too much to bring out something from your brain, because you've always done this before. Another thing about active recall is that it helps you to realize what you know and what you don't know, and what you think you know but you actually don't know. I hope you got the 3 things I wanted you to get. I hope you got why forgetting happened, how it happened, and the 2 techniques which you can use to combat forgetting, which is spaced repetition and active recall. So I believe that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, please do so. Subscribe right now. Yes, please do so now. And please like this video also for YouTube algorithm. Comment if you have any question. I'll be glad to respond.